Hello, beautiful souls. This is Rabia and welcome back to Rabia Unfolded, where we make every recipe with love, joy, and a little bit of fun. I know you're wondering why I'm holding these mangoes in my hands, right? Oh yeah, that's because I want to bring summer right into your kitchen. Today, we're turning these mangoes into a creamy, dreamy, homemade ice cream. This recipe is so simple that you will love to do it again and again. If you want to learn how to make homemade, creamy, dreamy mango ice cream from scratch and follow a step-by-step process, then you're at the right place. Just stay put, continue watching, and I'll take you through a step-by-step process of how to make a creamy, dreamy, homemade mango ice cream you would never forget. I started with mangoes that weren't fully ripe, but still sweet. First, I washed them thoroughly. Then, using vegetable peelers, I carefully removed the skin and placed the peeled mangoes on a clean plate. Next, I sliced the mangoes off their inner seed into small, manageable pieces. I took my time to make sure each piece was small enough to blend easily later. Once all the mangoes were sliced, I set them aside and moved on to preparing my milk mixture. Usually, you'd mix this on the stove in a saucepan, but I wanted everything to combine gently, so I used a small blender. I started by adding 2 tablespoons of cornstarch into the blender, followed by 2 cups of milk. To give it a fresh, zesty flavor, I added just a drizzle of my organic lemon flavor. Then, I covered the blender and blended everything until it was smooth and well combined. Once I was satisfied with the mixture, I set it aside. I placed a small pot on the stove and poured in 3/4 of the milk mixture, keeping the remaining quarter for later. I stirred continuously and quickly to prevent any lumps, until it thickened into a smooth, lightly thick custard. Once it reached the consistency I wanted, I added 1 cup of granulated sugar and gave it a good stir until all the sugar completely melted. After that, I turned off the stove and set the mixture aside to cool completely. While the milk mixture is cooling, I start blending my peeled mangoes. I add half of the mangoes into a blender along with half of the milk mixture I saved earlier. This helps the mangoes blend smoothly and become soft. Since my mangoes aren't fully ripe and lack that vibrant color, I add a little food coloring to give it a nice yellow natural hue. I cover the blender and blend until it's smooth and beautifully yellow. Once ready, I poured it into a big bowl and set it aside. Next, I blend the other half of the mangoes, this time adding a touch of orange food coloring. Blending this gives a rich orange color that, when combined with the yellow, will create the perfect color for my mango ice cream. Once it's smooth, I pour this into the same bowl with the yellow mango blend. In a clean bowl, I pour 2 cups of cream. Using a mixer, I gently whisk it until it reaches the consistency I want. This time, I'm careful not to overwhip because I want it to stay airy and fluffy. That way, it will give my mango ice cream a light, creamy texture. Once it's perfectly whipped, I set the cream aside. Once the whipped cream is ready, I place it right beside my bowl of blended mangoes. Now, I take my cold milk mixture, which is at room temperature, and pour it into the whipped cream. I give it a nice gentle stir until everything mixes smoothly. Next, I pour in my mango blend and mix again until everything comes together beautifully, rich, creamy, and full of that perfect yellow-orange color I wanted. The texture looks so smooth and creamy, just how I like it. Once I'm happy with the consistency and taste, I pour the mixture into a clean, airtight plastic container. Then, it's time to freeze this delicious homemade mango ice cream. I place the mango ice cream mixture into the freezer and let it sit for at least 6 to 8 hours, or until it's fully set and firm. Okay, beautiful souls, now that we have a dreamy, creamy ice cream already set in the freezer, we're gonna keep it there for at least 6 to 8 hours. But here's the trick. To keep that ice cream creamier and to avoid any ice crystals from building into it, I will make sure I set my alarm for every 2 hours. I'll take it out, give it a good stir, and then put it back in the freezer. And then the next 2 hours again, I take it out and give it a good stir and put it back in the freezer. This will help it stay creamier and will prevent any ice crystals from building into it. After about 2 hours, I take the ice cream out from the freezer and give it a good stir. This helps break up any ice crystals and keep the texture smooth and creamy. Once it's nicely mixed, I cover it again and place it back into the freezer to continue seeding. After the last 2-hour mix, I place the ice cream back in the freezer and let it sit overnight since it was already dark. By the next day, it was beautifully set, rich and creamy, just perfect and ready to enjoy. Just look at how beautiful and creamy it turned out. So yummy, so dreamy, and so creamy. It didn't just look good, it tasted absolutely amazing, rich, smooth, and perfectly creamy in the mouth. I set it aside and enjoyed it with my family. You know, sometimes things don't start off perfect, just like my mangoes weren't fully ripe. But with a little patience, love, and creativity, they turned out into something truly beautiful. That's the magic of homemade. It's not about perfection, it's about love, effort, and the joy that unfolds along the way. Thank you so much for unfolding this recipe with me. If you enjoyed watching how to make this creamy homemade mango ice cream, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Rabbi Unfolded for more homemade goodness, step-by-step recipes, and food that speaks love. Until next time, stay sweet, stay inspired, and keep unfolding those beautiful moments in your kitchen. Cheers.